Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sports by Northwest podcast. No, I'm not Bill Orm, and no, that's not Bill Orm. I am Aaron Fentress, and this is Brenna Green of KOIN TV. She's a sports anchor and sports reporter for KOIN. I work for the Oregonian, and we are invading the Sports by Northwest podcast, which are with our own version, opposite of our columnist, Bill Orm's. Brenna, finally, and before we get started, Brenna, I just have to take the time to just crack on management a little bit, because we first talked about this podcast in August. We went to lunch at Outback Steakhouse in August and hoped to do a podcast before or right after the big Georgia-Oregon game. And here we are 4 months later, finally getting it done. What is the deal with management in the world these days? I mean, they're probably gonna get mad at me for cracking on them, but I'm taking the opportunity.
Well, there's always there's red tape on both sides. And
but there was more than red tape.
Red tape.
It wasn't even red tape. It was like red parachutes, it's horrible.
We got through it. That's all that matters. We're here. We're sitting here now. It may have took longer than what we thought it was going to take, but we still got it done, and that is what counts.
That is what counts. Okay, so before we get started, let's explain our goal with this podcast. So I primarily cover the Blazers for the Oregonian, and I do some Duck stuff as well. I've covered the Ducks off and on for 17 years, what have you. A little bit of Beaver stuff as well, NFL, Major League Baseball, et cetera, perhaps even. You are going to be all over the map and have already been all over the map with KOIN. You've done Seahawks, Ducks, Beavers, Blazers, Preps. You're doing sideline reporting, right, for UAP and other things like that. So between the two of us, we're going to be out and about doing all sorts of things, and then we're going to come together and talk about primarily local sports and try and make some sense of some things, have some fun with some things. We're not going to be too deep into the nuances of X's and O's and strategies and things like that. We're going to take more of a bigger picture, fun look, sometimes critical, but not, diving too deep into the rigmarole, so to speak. And we're also going to dip a little bit into pop culture. We have a couple pop culture topics we're going to talk about today to have a little fun with. Those might get a little bit interesting here and there, but that's sort of what we want it to be. Just have a little fun back and forth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a good
time. First, let's introduce who you are, because I just said where you work, but talk about yourself a little bit so people know a little bit more of who you are on this platform.
Yeah, so born and raised in Portland, Oregon for all 18 years of my life. So
you're 18?
Yeah, some people think I am. It's a good time walking into a high school and being asked where your student ID is, because that has definitely happened. Not super recently, but recent enough. So yeah, first 18 years of my life here. So definitely have a rich knowledge of everything that has happened in this area, since before I was born. And then I went to Gonzaga for college, and then, lived a little bit of everywhere. I like to say I'm on the West Coast tour. Stops include Great Falls, Montana, Reno, Nevada, Spokane again, and then back here again. So I've really lived a lot of different places, done a lot of different things. So yeah, I came back home this past summer, got a job at KOIN, and I've been diving in deep here ever since. So yeah, just fun to be back home and fun to be working with someone who I know that you don't take offense to this. Somebody who I grew up reading.
Oh,
so
and you still got into the business. And you still got into the business.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Despite your warnings, I still got into the business. Oh yeah, every Sunday after Oregon football games, the sports section was pilfered in my house between my dad, my mom, and I. It would like get divvied up, and we'd like be like, all right, I want to read this, I want to read that. Can we switch this so that I can read that article? Yeah, that was the thing. So, nice. So yeah, I would read the sports section every single day on the way to school.
And you grew up in a UO household, right?
Yes,
right,
but
yes.
Also my mom's side of the family goes back 4 generations at Oregon State. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I kind of had an interesting upbringing in terms of that, because I still was around a lot of Beaver fans growing up, because a lot of my mom's brothers and sisters obviously grew up with that around them. So yeah, history at both schools, you could say.
And you played a little hoops, I understand?
Yeah, just a little bit. Nothing crazy.
Just a little bit.
I went to Jesuit high school. So, like, basically making JV at Jesuit is like making varsity at, like, so many
Don't name another school in that sentence.
No,
you'll offend somebody.
I'm not going to.
We don't need our first controversy.
But yeah, I quit after my sophomore year because I saw my destiny, and my destiny was running the same amount as everyone, but riding the bench. And I decided that wasn't very smart. That didn't make a lot of sense.
And you rode the bench for Kathy Adelman-Naro, who just won a state title last year with Beaverton. I saw you did a feature on her and her girls.
Yeah.
Her youngest, Maddie, my daughter, Taryn, actually played with her at Clutch basketball for a couple years. And I covered Kathy when she was first at Jesuit.
Yes.
So there's, a little bit of a small world connections there. Her daughter, Maddie, is really, all of her daughters were amazing at hoops. Still are. One's at Boise, and Maddie's going to Santa Clara. So there's a connection there. And we met at the Dallas Seahawks playoff game, and that was the 2018 season. So like January 2019, I think.
Yes, it would have been January 2019, like the first few days of January 2019.
We met there and chatted, and then when we were looking for someone to do a podcast with me, I talked to my BFF Lindsay, and she recommended you. You had been on my list, but I didn't know you all that well, but she recommended you. And I said, I need someone who can go toe to toe with me, not take things personally, not get all upset, flick crap back at me, and we can have fun with it. She's like, oh yeah, Brenna's your girl. She takes crap from nobody. And Lindsay knows how to handle me better than Lindsay and Brianne Maranthus know how to handle me better than anybody. And so if Lindsay recommended you, then we're good to go.
Absolutely. I appreciate Lindsay Schnell, and I appreciate her. I mean, the reason why she said that was because I covered Nick Rolovich last year and the whole saga with him with the vaccine. And it was an interesting few months. And I didn't take crap, and I didn't back down.
That was one of the things she mentioned. That's one of the things Lindsay mentioned, is that you were all over
much to the chagrin of some people. Whoopsies. Some of the more interesting Zooms, I shouldn't say some, the most interesting Zooms I will ever be on, those interviews. So,
okay. We'll see if we can beat that.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive right into our first topic. Now, you've been really busy this fall. Like I said, Ducks, Beavers. You've gone to Ducks, Beavers, Seahawks, Blazers, right?
Yes.
Already. And then a bunch of other stuff as well. Let's talk about the Blazers, which is, of course, my main wheelhouse right now. I do a podcast with Craig Birnbach. Burnback. I always screw that up. I always want to add some panache to it like his brother does. My name is Birnback. And so we dive deep into the Blazers with the minutia. But with us, we're going to just be different with this. And so I'm just going to come out right now and just say, this team's annoying. Like, straight up. Like, I do not understand how they lost to Minnesota last night. I'm irritated by the fact that they came out, just played sloppy, right? Just horrible. 6 turnovers within 10 minutes. They couldn't, not making shots is one thing, but taking bad shots, not really running the offense, being mediocre on defense. And they did this on a night where they're starting a 3-game road trip before coming home and playing 10 and 11 at home, in a critical month for them. They're going to have 11 out of 15 home games this month. At the end of this month, they will balance out all the road games they will have played to start the season. They've had a couple of 6-game road trips, et cetera, et cetera. And so if they don't have a big month this month, then I think we can write them off as just an average team. If they can have a big month and make a run, maybe they get back into the top 4. So for them to play that way and then have Billups come out and talk about, within the first few minutes, I knew that we just had a casualness to us. And then we're trying to scratch and claw claw and fight back from that. And then, of course, Grant goes down for a minute. Dame and Ant can't hit shots, which again, it's fine, but Nurkic gets into foul trouble. And you lose that game. I just was sitting there watching on TV. I didn't go on this trip. I was just rolling my eyes like, what is wrong with you? And then Dame, after the game, is saying the same things he's been saying every time this happens. We're still learning each other. We have some youth. Some guys don't understand. You got to bring it every night mentally and physically. It's the NBA. It's tough to win, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just at the point right now where it's just like, I'm not blaming Dame for saying that or blaming Chauncey for saying that, but I'm beyond that stuff. It's like either you're going to prove that you can ball or you're just going to be what everyone thought you were at the beginning of the season. That's a playing team. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just kind of over like the general excuses. It's just I feel like there's always some sort of excuse, and it's just kind of like, all right, I'm done with the excuses. Either get it done or not. I mean, they have won some games that they needed to win at home, against, the Hornets or the Pistons the other night. Yeah, those are games you should win high. Right. But, it's just one of those things where you're like, can you guys just put it together for like a solid stretch? It feels like it's always one step forward, two steps back right now. That's what it really feels like. Just, I didn't even put that together until right now, but verbally processing, like, it's like, oh, okay, we did something good. Oh, never mind, we're back. And I understand injuries happen. These are things that happen. I understand why they kept Dame out for an extended period of time at the beginning of the season. I totally get it. And by the way, they were doing pretty well without Dame to start. It was like, oh, okay, this team can do this without Dame. That's really exciting. And now it's just like at some point you just have to be like, look, we can't, keep saying, all right, GP2's out, or, Sear Little's out, or whatever it is, Justice Winslow's
out. We had slippage. We haven't practiced.
It's just getting to a point where it's like, all right, I need to see you guys put it together, or like you said, you are what we thought you were, So yeah, I agree with you on the annoying part. I think fans are getting annoyed. I just, see random things pop up on Twitter where fans are just kind of like, why does this keep happening? Like,
exactly.
Let's win the games you are supposed to win. I understand that's not going to happen every night in the NBA. That's not realistic, but there's been so many, you referenced those, the Thunder games, like they should have at least split those games.
Correct.
And that sort of stuff. So yeah.
They have, here's a fun stat for you. They haven't defeated a team with a current winning record since December 4th against Indiana. They play Indiana, on tomorrow, Friday, actually. So that'll be their chance to get their first victory over a winning team in a month. They haven't won back-to-back games since they defeated Minnesota, San Antonio, and that ended on December 14th. And then you mentioned the OKC losses; those are bad, and we can forgive at Dallas, at Denver. I mean, those are really good teams. Luka went off that night. You can even forgive at Golden State because they were missing a bunch of guys and they were gassed.
Yes.
But if you're going to lose those games, you got to make up for it by beating the teams that are sub 500 most of the time. And the fact that they've lost to 3 of those teams is not a good look. And the fact that their only wins in the last 9 games have come at Houston, one of the worst teams in the league, against Charlotte, one of the worst teams in the league, and against Detroit, one of the worst teams in the league. So they got 3 wins over teams that are going to be in the top 5 in the NBA draft. And so they at this point, I'm done. Like you said, I'm done with the excuses, and some of them are legit, but it just doesn't matter at some point. You got to win games to climb out of this hole they're in 8th place. Because had you won those 3 games, you'd be 5th right now. That's how narrow things are in the West. So yeah. I'm going to give them to the end of the month. I said on the Blazer Focus podcast, they need to win 7 out of those, at least 7 out of those 10 games that are at home. With Damian at home this season, or excuse me, they're 8-6 at home this season. With Damian in the lineup and not getting injured, they're 8-2. So if that plays out, they should win 8 of those 10 games, or at least 7 at the end of the month. Maybe you're top 4, and then we can start, really figuring out where we think this team's going to go. But yeah, that game last night just left me rolling my eyes. I almost switched over to Seinfeld reruns.
Just looking at these games over this next month, I mean, Magic winnable, Cavs, as long as Donovan Mitchell doesn't go off for 71, I'd say that's winnable. Mavs, if you've got 2 Mavs games, hopefully
you got to split. You got to split that.
You got to split. 76ers they're good this year. That that might be tough, especially Embiid. You should beat the Lakers. You should beat the Spurs. Jazz is probably a toss up. And then
oh my gosh,
Raptors,
they better handle
Hawks.
the Jazz.
I mean, those are all games that are totally winnable.
Right.
So hopefully we are singing their praises in a few weeks.
Now, one thing that will help them will be getting Gary Payton II fully on board and rolling. You were there with me on Monday night when he made his long-anticipated season debut. I swear that me and some of the reporters have talked about it periodically about how it's like, there's reports he's going to come back and then he doesn't. And I think the Blazers have actually been pretty transparent with things. Like Chauncey has talked about, he has to overcome things mentally and physically. He was experiencing soreness on days he worked out really hard. They didn't want to get in a situation where he would play in a game, have severe soreness. Now you got to shut him down again. He only played 13 minutes in that first game. He was on a minutes restriction, but he tweaked his ankle. And then he doesn't play against Minnesota because of the ankle injury. So that's just, bad luck. But I'm curious what you think about if he's able to get back to 25 minutes a night and being that defensive pest that he was against Detroit with a couple steals. What kind of impact do you think he can have on the overall makeup of this Blazers team?
I love his energy.
Yeah.
I love it. It's funny just even like watching him out there, like in between plays or like before the game, like him and Josh Hart were like juggling like soccer style the ball. There was a moment in the game which I got on camera where he had the ball. He like had a lady in the crowd touch it. And I'm not sure if he was like, I'll give you this, or if he was like, touch this ball for good luck. I don't know which one it was. But she was like, she like touched it and then he like took it back from her. And it was very like, cute. And I think he brings a really good vibe to this team. And it's, obviously not just like funny stuff like that, which I think teams need. They need someone that's kind of a little bit more gregarious like that. But, obviously his hustle and his energy, you could just see it immediately, was a huge lift to that team. Yep. I would imagine that they'd have him keep coming off the bench.
Yes.
And I think that he's going to be a huge lift to that second unit.
Absolutely.
You take somebody off and there's not going to be any slippage. In fact, the energy could go up with him on the court. So I saw him tweak that ankle and him running up and down the court trying to get it untweaked. And I was like, are you for real right now? Like, no.
Right. But after the game, he made it sound like it wasn't that big a deal. Like, I mean, he was going to thug through it, he said.
He went back in, but I don't know. I could just tell. I was like, I think this is going to keep you out for a few games. So here we are. One game missed. Yeah. Hopefully it's the only one. What are your thoughts on Gary?
Well, look, the thing about the NBA, so NBA scores 115, 114, and somewhere in there, right? And so it comes down to a few possessions. You can flip the fortunes of a possession exchange in each quarter. That can be a 16-point swing because you're taking 2 away and adding 2. Gary Payton gives you a guy who, if he can just go out there and just be disruptive on the other team's best scorer, 1 through 3 at least, and maybe cost them a couple of baskets that someone else wouldn't have the ability to cost, then that could be like a 4 or 5 point swing every night in your favor in terms of disrupting that guy. And he's not gonna be able to beat you as well as he would if he were being guarded by Damian, Anthony, or even Hart, who's a good defender. But when your best 2 players, well, I guess Grant's probably the second best player right now, but your best 2 guards, your best, most high volume shooters are also minus defenders, then that dilutes what they're able to bring offensively because they're giving up points to opposing guards. Mm-hmm. So to have Payton come in there and take 25 minutes, and it's going to be interesting to see how Billups juggles those minutes, but have him come in there and reduce that number a little bit just with his presence on the court it's just going to be huge. And they can get Winslow back, Nasir back. You have Nurk, you got Grant. I mean, you're never going to take Dame out of the game, but the game's on the line and you need a defensive unit out there, and you go with Payton, Hart, Grant, Nasir, and Nurkic. That's a really good defensive unit. They're never going to do that because you would never disrespect Dame like that, but at least you have those pieces. So part of my equation for this month, and why I do believe they're going to play their way into the top 4 by the end of this month, if not higher, is getting those other two guys back, mixing in Payton, and then now you have a more formidable defensive unit to balance out your high power scoring, and then boom, this team could take off. But they got to show up every night like they care.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. You can't be lackadaisical in the NBA.
No, like Bill said, we're not good enough to do that, and they're not.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on from them because we're going to talk about them a lot, and let's talk about some Ducks and Beavers. We're going to start with the Ducks, who ended their season with a bowl victory, their second best into a season, next to the Rose Bowl win since 2014. They lost in 2014 in the national championship game, but just going to the national championship game
Don't remind me.
Any bowl victory. So Dan Lanning's first season, obviously Oregon fans went through this whole emotional breakup with Mario, and then immediately, kicked him to the curb and then found their new coach and fell in love with him. And he could do no wrong for 9 months. And then the season started and they were doing well. They fell apart at the end of the season there a little bit, but recovered with the bowl victory. Give me your overall impression of what type of season this was for Oregon and for Lanning.
If I were to grade it, I'd give it like
great.
B plus. B. We're going B.
I'm talking Ducks. I gave him a B minus, and Anthony Newman threatened to come through the screen and choke me. Jokingly, of course. Jokingly, of course. But I had those guys fired up. So you're saying B. So you're right there, sort of. You're at B plus B. That's fine. I can accept that. But go give us why you give them a B plus.
I mean, really, it would be ranked. It would be higher if it weren't for that Oregon State loss, because that was
exactly
the most
keep going
catastrophic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unreal. I mean, I'm walking around on the sideline in the third quarter, like, okay, like, we're good to go. We kind of know what this is going to look like. I know what I'm going to talk about, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, what is going on here? It kind of reminded me, not totally, but it was a similar feeling as, and this is going to be a deep cut for Pac-12 fans, but 2019 football season, UCLA went up to Wazoo, and Wazoo was up by like 3, maybe even 4. I think it was 3 touchdowns in the third quarter. And then UCLA came back and won the game. And I was just sitting there on the sideline. I mean, it was such a blowout midway through the third that I told my photographer to stop shooting. I was like, we're good. Don't worry about it. And then obviously
you should know better than that. You're too experienced.
Yeah, well, we'd had a really long day. So okay. I was trying to be nice to him because we literally started at I think 7 a.m. that morning. So I was like, because we had another game we had to go to over at Idaho and Moscow, which everybody is now learning is very close to Pullman because of other things, unfortunately. And so, yeah, we had a very long day where we went from Eastern Washington and Idaho to UCLA and WSU, and in between that, Gardner Minshew returned to WSU for the first time, and that was while he was a huge thing with the Jags. So it was a long day. So I was trying to be nice, okay? And eventually we both looked at each other, and he was like, "Yeah, I know." And I was like, "Thank you." So it reminded me it reminded me a lot of that, where it was like, all right, we got this in hand. We're good. It's going to be fine. Oh no, it's not fine. It's not fine at all. So yeah, I think that just has a significant impact on this season. I mean, the UW game's a UW game. I think Oregon wins that game if Bo Nix doesn't get hurt.
Correct. I agree.
I really did not like that play call immediately as I saw it happening on the third down. I was like, it's too far. No, I don't like that. He could get hurt on that. And then all of a sudden I look down and I'm like, okay, yeah, he's hurt. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. So, I can't hate on people too much. And I know he's a good runner, but I did not think that was my immediate gut reaction was no. And my gut reaction was correct. So, those are two like pivotal moments that I'm just kind of like,
Okay.
But, it's his first year being a head coach.
Right.
You have to remember that. Obviously, he had a pretty good national signing day a few weeks ago. They just picked up another recruit the other day, another 4-star. So, it now becomes seeing if he can make his guys gel. And I think he did an incredible job of making guys who are not his guys gel this year. I mean, that whole team loves Dan Lanning. That's really, really obvious to me just being around them. He is very, very well respected and well liked around that team. So I'll give it a B. Could it have been better? Yeah. But I think you have to remember it's his first year. And so you have to give a little bit of grace. What are your thoughts?
Well, on the whole grading thing, first of all, the end goal is to make it to the playoffs. They did not. That would be an A+. Then winning the conference championship would be an A. Then they didn't do that. So then you come down to A-, B+ territory. For me, though, I ding them hard for one, the lopsided loss to Georgia, 49-3, which I think demonstrated just how far this program still is from being a contender, regardless of what the record is, beating up on teams in the Pac-12. And then the Oregon State collapse. I don't fault them for what happened against UW because, your star quarterback got hurt, although I would say you clearly had you didn't have one pass play you thought Ty Thompson could execute.
Yeah.
like just one, that was a little weird to me. But I'm not going to hold that against them. When your star quarterback gets hurt, you're probably going to lose in that situation. But
especially
the Oregon
with
State
the amount
collapse,
of time that was left.
Yeah, but the Oregon State collapse was just like, that's so bad. And I said at the time, and that was the worst. That was worse than the Alamo Bowl collapse against TCU. Because in that game, you lost your quarterback. In this game, you still had your quarterback. You couldn't stop the run. You kept giving him a short field, the fumbled punt snap. But that was just, and it was against your in-state rival. Like that was just so bad. That's definitely worth two, from an A- right there, just to a B. And then the fact that the defense, which is Lanning's side of the ball, was not very good. They were 71st in the country in total D, 76th in scoring D. Penix lit them up. If Cam Rising's healthy, and of course Nix wasn't healthy, I know, but if Cam Rising was healthy in that game, I think they score over 30 in that game, but they didn't because Rising wasn't rising. And then of course Oregon State ran all over you in the second half. They made a comeback without passing the football, which is a 21-point comeback, which is virtually unheard of. So given the fact that that's his side of the ball, that's his domain, and also some people were saying, oh, he's a first-year head coach, and okay, I give you some of that, but he also took over a 10-win team, so there's allegedly talent there to work with. And he brought in a good quarterback. He did a lot of good things. But for me, I'm just saying B- because of those three main things I cited. And if those three, like if they lose a respectable game to Georgia, they beat Oregon State, right? Now you're in the Pac-12 title game. And if you win that, those are the things that bump you up to an A+. So I'm not giving him that. B-, I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I think Dan Lanning needs to take Tosh Lupoi to defensive coordinator boot camp. It's we got to have some serious.
But if you're the head coach and you're a defensive guy and you were the defensive coordinator for a team that went to the national title, that won the national title last year, and everyone assumed, just by hiring Dan Lanning, our defense is going to be just exceptionally better. Then Lanning hired Lupoi, and that should be Lanning's defense, because if you're a defensive guy, you're bringing your defense and you're getting a coordinator coming to run your defense, I would think, because if that coordinator leaves, you don't want to change defenses. The next coordinator has to come in and basically run your defense. So I can't put it all on the defensive coordinator when your head coach is a defense guru. Just like back in the day, when Chip Kelly was offensive coordinator, he called the plays, but he was offensive coordinator, head coach. He could never blame the offensive staff if the offense wasn't running well. He had to carry some of that blame himself. So that's on Dan as well.
Yeah, I can totally get that. I just think that, especially now that he's not co-defensive coordinator, he is the defensive coordinator.
He definitely shares blame.
There's, there was 12 men on the field during North Carolina's final drive in the Holiday Bowl, and they got lucky that they didn't. I mean, I was sitting there with my mouth aghast. Like, how does that happen in, and that's solidly a defensive coordinator, defensive staff thing. That's not something Dan Lanning should be concerned about on that final drive.
Agreed.
So I that sort of stuff. I mean, and the whole knock on LaPointe when he came in was, yeah, he's a good recruiter. Can he be a defensive coordinator? Because, I mean, he was the defensive coordinator at Bama, if I'm remembering correctly, and got demoted. So, like, this is, he's got some stuff to prove in my eyes. And especially now since he is the solo defensive coordinator. And, yeah, I agree with you that obviously Dan is involved, but things like 12 men on the field, that's
man, that really bothered you, didn't it?
It did. It really bothered me. It showed a lack of attention to detail, and I hate that. Okay, I hate that. So,
noted.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was, and I mean, yes, I think their co-defensive coordinator was still with them then. He hadn't moved on to Baylor yet, but everybody knew he was going to move on to Baylor the next game, so I'm sure that was more so LaPointe's defense to call that game. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a little like, all right, I know you're a good recruiter and I appreciate that. Let's see the X's and O's part of it now. So, and the thing that's tough too is Oregon doesn't let us talk to their coordinators in season or any of their other coaches.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, which is really, I came from covering WSU, which, God, we get coordinators all the time. So especially under Leach didn't care. Leach would let you talk to anybody. So, I mean, you get the linebackers coach, you get the special teams coach. It didn't matter. So, that's another thing that's difficult is that it's really tough to read what's going on with it because the last time we got to talk to Tosh LaPointe was in August. So right. It's there's just a lot of ambiguity with it, and that's difficult. So, all right. Oregon State.
Woo.
Their first 10-win season since 2000. Obviously, we have already talked about
2006.
them. 2006.
They won 10 in 2006,
Yeah. And, we've already talked about them a little bit and how they had obviously a very good win against Oregon. We got to give them their flowers. I mean,
we got a grade too, but go ahead.
Yeah. The fact that they were able to do what they did, running the ball as much as they did in the second half. God, I'm trying to remember the exact stat. I feel like there was only like 2 pass plays or something crazy like that. Says a lot about where this team can go, especially with the fact that they're returning their whole offensive line. Do you want to go with your grade first, since I went with my grade first last time?
Sure. I mean, I give Jonathan Smith's grade as a coach. And people are going to say, well, how are you doing this if you didn't give the Ducks better than that B-? Why? I'm giving them an A on a curve because of where Oregon State has been. Yes. Jonathan Smith took over this program and they won look this right here, 2-5-2, then up to 7, then up to 10. So they're coming from a different place than Oregon was. So I'm giving Jonathan Smith's performance as a coach without a marquee quarterback to win 10 games and come back against Oregon the way he did. I'm giving him an A. And I love the fact that they are back. There's a pocket of Oregon State fans out there that don't like me because they think I'm anti-Oregon State. And I think that's because I've covered Oregon, but my job was always Oregon reporter, so it wasn't personal against Oregon State.
Yeah.
But when they hired Jonathan Smith, I was like, he's going to bring this program back. I believed in him. That's come true. He's just the perfect coach for this program. I love the fact that they locked him up. They didn't mess around. They probably paid him more than they could afford, but they're keeping him around because they know that other schools are going to come after him. They look at what he did at Oregon State. They go, I want that guy to come rebuild my program. And then to go out, my whole thing with them has been, you got to get quarterback fixed. You get quarterback fixed, that can change everything. The fact that he won 10 games with quarterback being mediocre, like I said, is impressive. But now they got a kid and do it. DJ Uiagalelei? Uiagalelei, right?
No.
Uiagalelei? No?
You're so wrong.
Wait. Uiagalelei.
No.
Lale? No? What is it?
Uiagalelei.
Uiagalelei. I was close. Damn, I practiced that for like an hour. Anyway, so
benefits of working in TV, you have to
I know.
right. Even if
so from here on out, I'm calling him DJ. So DJ, I love that name too. I gotta learn it. It's so nice to say.
It is.
DJ, former 5-star recruit to Clemson, right? Mm-hmm. Things didn't work out there, but things didn't work out to the tune of 3,000 yards of total offense and 29 touchdowns total with only 7 interceptions thrown. Whereas I think Oregon State this year had 2,500 yards of total offense from the quarterbacks with like 15 touchdowns and 13 or whatever interceptions. So this is a huge upgrade. He's 6'4", 250, which means he can run over people like Cam Newton. He's got good speed, a rocket arm. And there's no reason to believe that, especially under Jonathan Smith, that DJ can't make a similar leap in production than what we saw from Nix and Eugene. It could be the exact same situation. And if that happens, then it doesn't matter what the Ducks do because Oregon State is going to be a problem and might beat them again because the running game, like you said, should be strong with the offensive line returning. The defense, I mentioned Oregon's mediocre defense. OSU ranked 16th in the nation in scoring defense. Yes, they're going to lose some dudes, but that's still that defense they're going to plug in and still be pretty good. So if you have a strong defense, strong running game, and a potentially elite level quarterback, you're a big problem for everyone in that conference. So props to Oregon State for where they've gone, and I think their future looks good.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be covering college football in the state of Oregon. I was just giddy. Once Uiagalelei committed, I was like, see? I got
Uiagalelei. Uiagalelei. Come on, get it right.
When he committed, I was just like over the moon excited because this next year is gonna be one of the most entertaining, interesting years to cover college football here ever. It's gonna be up there with the 2000 year and everything like that. So, yeah, I agree with your grading on a curve. And I want to add another thing to that curve. Let's just look at resources here, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh yeah.
Oregon State. Not probably comparable. So that's another thing where Jonathan Smith is doing more with less. And that is impressive. Florida win, I'm kind of like about because they should have beaten Florida in that bowl game.
It wasn't truly Florida.
No, it was not Florida. Yeah. That was Florida's JV team. Right. That might be a compliment. I was like, if they lose this game, that's not a good sign. That is not a good sign for not only for Oregon State but the entire Pac-12. But still, I mean, I think what Jonathan has done has been remarkable, and to see it all really come together this year was really impressive. And yeah, like you said, that offensive line, it's all returning next year. So the offense is really should take a step forward. And yeah, I'm fascinated to watch this all play out. Next year is going to be, and you get the brand new stadium at Reser next year too.
That's right.
So you have that extra juice as well. Excited to see how that all looks, considering, this year it was a little interesting there, but we got it done.
So given all that though, which program do you think has the brighter future, not just next season, but beyond? Is it still Oregon?
I think it's still Oregon. I'm sorry.
It kind of is. Did you see that recruiting class? That recruiting class is nasty.
Yeah, it's just, as much as you want to be like, I'm going to pick the underdog. Like, you see the amount of money that Oregon has, and it's just, it's kind of, it's apples and oranges in terms of that. So, Hopefully,
apples are green and oranges are orange. Interesting. Did you mean that?
Sure.
Were you going for that?
Yeah, okay. Totally. So, yeah, you have to go Oregon, and I'm assuming by your response you agree with that.
Yeah, I think the smart money is on Oregon, but sometimes these recruiting classes aren't what they're made out to be, which last year, I mentioned this on Talking Ducks. I think I mentioned it on the Ducks Confidential podcast, that I was hearing from some former assistants that some of those Oregon recruiting classes under Mario were a little bit inflated. Mm-hmm. That goes on sometimes in the recruiting world. And so I think the fact that you saw a mediocre defense with 3 5-star kids on it, I think the fact that you saw 15 guys enter the transfer portal, that they didn't land a quarterback in 6 years, although Ty Thompson, who knows, we'll see how he develops. But between Taggart, Mario, and Lanning, they haven't landed a freshman quarterback yet who's grown into a starter. Their top running backs were transfers. So the last, legitimate starting recruit at running back was CJ Verdell. Dye only started because Verdell got injured. Verdell was part of the 2017 recruiting class. He committed to Gary Campbell. So literally you have not recruited a starting running back yet. One good receiver, Franklin, obviously, some tight ends, offensive line. Mario did a good job there, but there's just question marks on this roster, despite having these high-end recruiting classes. So I think the 4 years leading into this year a combined ranking of 11, whereas Utah's combined ranking was 44, and they won the Pac-12 back-to-back seasons. So sometimes these recruiting classes that people get all giddy about, there might be a lot of fluff in there. So I want to see if Dan Lanning's 4-star recruits, because not all 4-star recruits are created equal. If his 4-star recruits are a little bit better than some of the guys Mario brought in who didn't pan out. Because had all those classes panned out the way they should have, this Ducks team should have, won the conference probably. But they couldn't even get to the conference championship game, and they lost Oregon State for the second time in 3 years. So I'm thinking, and I know my man Tim Ewis out there, former Oregon State receiver, our tight end, loves saying this, that Oregon State does a better job of actually identifying talent and developing that talent. Mm-hmm. And I think there was some evidence of that this season, given how the year played out, and given the fact that one team had a legit quarterback, the other one did not, yet they finished, but they both had 10 wins, and the team without the quarterback beat the other team, which has more resources. So if Lanning's recruiting is legit, and these players are as talented as their star rankings say, then it's Oregon. But if Jonathan Smith is better at identifying and developing talent and redshirting those 3-star kids and then turning them into 5-star talents, and DJ is legit, and he's going to be there more than 1 year, more than likely, whereas Nix will be gone, and we don't know who the quarterback for Oregon is going to be in 2024, then you have to wonder if Oregon State might actually end up having the brighter future. I know that was long. I'll stop right now, but I give Oregon State a chance to maybe sort of be the king of the castle in this state for a little bit if Oregon does not do a better job of actually identifying legitimate talent.
I will say I'm almost at a point where I think the transfer portal is more important in the recruiting world than than actual recruits
especially at quarterback. Yeah, but you can't totally live off the portal. But yeah, especially someone like Oregon, because you can go out and probably have the resources, the NIL money to entice and fill in holes easier than Oregon State probably could.
Yes, exactly. So I'm hesitant to knock people for recruiting classes as much now because of the portal. But I totally understand where you're coming from. And, we've all seen programs who get, let's look at Texas A&M this year. How'd that go? Not great.
Oh my gosh.
So
there's always these programs who have these crazy recruiting classes, and then they just go, and that's what I'm talking about, where they're not all created equal.
Yes. I totally agree with you there.
All right. So as we promised, we have a couple pop culture tidbits here and there, just because, it's kind of fun to talk about something else. So we're each going to pick one each week to give our little statement on. The other one will either poke the other one's buttons or agree or disagree or what have you. But mine is, I've actually gotten into some Instagram debates lately regarding how much child support Kanye West must pay Kim Kardashian. People are freaking out mostly, man, that he has to pay $200,000 a month, which is $2.5 million, $2.4 million a year, which I think over the course of the lifetime of they have 3 or 4 kids. I forgot to look that up. 3 or 4, whatever. 4 is going to end up being like someone calculated it to be maybe $40 million after, because each. Well, actually, the child support will continue even after 18, but about $40 to $50 million Kanye West will pay in child support. And look, there's no lying that that's a lot of money, and a lot of the men complaining about that are saying there's no kids don't cost that much. It's not about how much the kids cost to actually survive. It's about how much the kids cost to raise in that world, right? And they're both billionaires. So this is what happens in child support court. You take the incomes of both parents, you put them together, then a formula kicks out a number that's supposed to go towards the kids. If two people make 50 grand, that number may be $800. If two people make 50 million, that number may be 800,000. That's just how it works. And in that world, those kids probably get a new iPhone every month. You can't have the same iPhone, right, for a month, can you? And plus, they have to probably security. They have to get rid of them so no one's tracking them. And then their clothes.
I think the majority of the expenses are security.
Right. And they're not shopping for deals. Like whenever I've purchased, I do this with myself. Whenever I purchase clothes, I'm looking for the best deal. I'm not going to spend $100 for a pair of slacks if I can get the same slacks for $50. They wouldn't even look at $100 pair of slacks. Or even if they saw $100 pair of slacks, they'd probably pay $1,000 just to say they paid $1,000 for it. So their kids are probably wearing $1,000 worth of stuff a day. And I doubt they wear it all multiple times or beyond once or twice a time, right? Then these kids travel with security detail. They all do because they're targets. And I would too if I were billionaires and in the public eye like they are. So if they go somewhere, if they go on vacation, they're just not buying, those kids 4 first-class tickets to Paris. They have to buy, they're probably taking a private jet, right? Which is going to be 25 grand or whatever. And then you have to pay for your security detail for their travel, their food. Like my point is that I think 200 grand is more than fair. And I think men need to stop crying about it because it's not your money. It's Kanye's money. And Kanye's already demonstrated that he can be reckless with his money anyway because he runs his mouth too much. So why should the kids suffer because their dad has to give up 1/20th of his net worth?
I was going to say, do we think he's going to have that money for however many X years?
Well, if he's allegedly worth $1 billion, and we know that's not liquid, but still, if he's allegedly worth $1 billion or so, if he doesn't make another dime for the next 20 years of those kids being raised, his net worth would only be impacted about 20%. So he still have $9.5 billion of net worth, or sorry, $950 million of net worth. And that's, again, if he doesn't make another dime from here on out. So anyway, I thought it was just funny just watching men freak out about it like they had to pay it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of that money is security stuff.
And tuition, they're going to crazy schools that just.
Oh yeah.
And they probably have tutors that travel. They probably just have tutors at home.
Yep.
They got pocket change. We're going to the arcade, the kids
pulling
out wads of hundreds and stuff.
One Kardashian West does. Just gonna go play some bumper cars, Yeah.
Okay, your turn. Let's see if you have anything else to say about this.
It's been really interesting the last few months to watch the Royals with Harry and Meghan coming out with more and more stuff. Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
What?
Coming out with more and more stuff just about their experience in that family. As of this recording today, it came out that apparently there was a physical altercation between Harry and William, where Harry called William over to the house to talk about their issues over Meghan and the press and things like that. This was before they left England. And William showed up and basically straight up knocked him to the ground. And
wait, there's a battle royale?
Yes, the battle royale. And caused him to fall over on the dog bowl, and the bowl shattered and cut up his back, and all that sort of stuff, according to Harry. Anyways,
is he suing? Did he sue? Did he come back? Was there more?
Well,
I'm interested now.
Well, William wanted him to come back, and William was like, why don't we duke it out like we used to as kids? And Harry was like, I don't think so. According to Harry, anyways, this is all from Harry's side.
Right. Harry wouldn't lie.
What I think is more interesting about it is, obviously, this is not normal for this sort of stuff to come out about that family. But Harry and Meghan have to find a way to, once again, as we talked about with Kim and Kanye, pay for their lifestyle.
And
so, you have this Netflix deal where they had this, like, I forget how many part documentary that came out about their experience. And
did you watch it?
No.
Okay.
I'm not that crazy.
So you're interested, but you're not all in.
No. You know what I do? I listen to podcasts about it. So then I find out everything I need to know.
That's worse.
No, it's
but anyway,
not.
Go ahead. It kind of is. But go ahead.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I get the condensed version. I get all the highlights. I don't need to watch
It's the Cliff Notes.
Stuff.
It's the Cliff Notes.
Exactly.
It's the Cliff Notes. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll buy that.
It's
all
more
right. Continue.
condensed.
All right.
I'd much rather have somebody else do the research for me, not have to sit through something that a lot of people called, for the majority of it, boring, and get the good stuff. All right.
All right.
Thank
all
you.
Right. That's fair.
So, they have that coming out. They have this memoir that Harry's coming out with. That's why this whole story came out. So it's just very interesting to see what they're having to do in order, because they also need a pretty strong security detail. And they also, want to keep living in their house. And I forget where they live. Gosh, I'm blanking on where they live. I think it's Santa Barbara, maybe. That sort of stuff. So I think it's very interesting, the things they are having to do, because I guarantee you neither of them want to really do this stuff. But they don't have a choice. It's not like Meghan can go back to acting, okay? Like, she's at that point, that ship has sailed. It's over.
Yeah. You can't really cast her, right?
No, not really. So, and the other thing is at some point, this is going to run out. They can't keep kind of getting a meal ticket off of this. Right. A meal ticket sounds...
The woe is me act is not going to last forever.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can't make money off of this, 10 years down the road. So,
right.
Yeah, I guess my take about it is just, it's not so much about the actual fight. It's about all this information that's coming out that we normally wouldn't get, but because people have to keep their lifestyles up, they kind of have to do it.
They put all their business out in the world for everyone to consume.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how little I care about any of this. Like, sometimes it's shocking how much I actually know about everything dating back to Prince Charles and Princess Diana's wedding. Like, I remember that being all over television. And I remember,
osmosis.
I was like 10 or something, like rolling my eyes, like, why do we care about these people? But yeah, it's just there. It's out in the atmosphere, so you're gonna consume some of it. But you piqued my interest at fight. Like, now you're talking about them having to make money. If Harry can convince his brother to get in the ring, boxing ring, octagon, pay-per-view that baby, I'll plop down $69.99 to watch that. That would be amazing.
I don't think William's hurting for money as much.
I know William probably wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying that would interest me. I would tune in to watch two brothers fight over the controversy involving one of them marrying Meghan Markle.
Yes.
Meghan Markle.
Markle.
Anyway, okay. All right. Woo. Well, hopefully we can raise the bar in the future and not talk about the Kanyes and the royals of the world. Although those were definitely pop culture shenanigans that needed a little bit of our attention, I think. So,
yes.
Good work. All right. Anything else you want to add on our first episode of the Aaron and Brenna version of Sports by Northwest?
No, I think we're good. We're off to a rousing start here.
We are, and we're going to come back next week, and hopefully the Blazers will have racked up some wins. And we got to get into your sport more, basketball. Yeah. Oregon State basketball. You're going to be covering some of those games, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, as much as we can be down there, we'll try to be. I don't know. We'll see. Oregon and Oregon State have both got to pick it up, at least on the men's side. There's some work to be done there as well. There's some work to be done over the general state of basketball in this state, with the exception of the Westland boys. Give them their flowers.
Oh,
they're carrying the mantle right now.
Right? Did you cover any of that?
No, I wasn't there. No? Unfortunately, it was days off, and I had to be anchoring and stuff like that. But yeah, the Westland boys right now. They're my number one basketball team in the state of Oregon.
They're the best. They're the best team. They might be able to beat these Blazers if they're not focused. All right, that is it. Please subscribe. When you do, you will get feeds to both our version of Sports by Northwest and, of course, our columnist Bill Orm's version. And give us a positive rating, especially our Kanye content. I think it was money, and I think our delivery on the Royal situation was pretty solid as well. But anyway, we'll be back next week with another edition of Sports by Northwest. Take care.